Welcome to a meeting of the Senate Energy, Utilities, and Communications Committee. We have a one-item agenda today, AB 64 by Assemblymember Krikorian. Thank you all for joining us today. Just give us a few minutes for the Assemblyman to arrive and we'll get underway.
Just give him a
just under the deadline for Senator Cox to consider voting for the bill. But as we get started here, let me just, for the benefit of the members in the audience and those watching from home, recognize that this issue of renewable energy and specifically upping our renewable energy mandate in the state of California has been through quite a journey this year and in previous years. We start this hearing by recognizing not just today's hearing, but the multiple hearings that this committee has had on the issue through the various bills that have worked their way through this committee. And I'm thankful for the Republican members of this committee and their colleagues in the Senate for granting a rule waiver that have allowed this special consideration of this bill today, because one of the things that's been consistent in prior deliberations of RPS legislation is a desire to see the final product before a final floor vote, and that's what we're being afforded today. In previous hearings, there's been a myriad of issues that have been raised, both by members of the committee as well as witnesses in support and opposition of the bills that have been before this committee, everything ranging from cost containment to deliverability language to transmission capacity to flexibility along the way of for folks who may not be quite hitting the targets, the treatment of investor-owned utilities versus publicly owned utilities, and on and on and on. And through the process of committee deliberations, both in the Senate as well as the Assembly, scores of meetings in members' offices and meetings amongst members themselves, including our two legislative leaders, I think we have arrived at what is a good, fair, and balanced package and approach to up our mandate from 20% to 33%. So we're certainly eager to hear you present your amended bill. And I also recognize Senator Simitian, a member of this committee, who is the author of SB 14, which is now sort of a companion bill, these two bills representing a package that will guide our state in reaching the 33% level. So I'll leave it at that, ask you to present. We will be taking witnesses both in support and in opposition today, but I will even keep all of your testimony to a minimum, since pretty much everything that needs to be said has been said repeatedly, and many of us were together just last night on the fourth floor on the Assembly side of the Capitol. So in the interest of time, everybody's time, I'll ask for a brevity when it comes to public comment. Let's first establish a quorum and then hear from Mr. Krikorian. Quorum call, please.
Padilla?
Here.
Padilla here. Benoit?
Here.
Benoit here. Calderon?
Here.
Calderon here. Corbett?
Here.
Corbett here. Cox?
Here.
Cox here. Kehoe?
Here.
Kehoe here. Lowenthal?
Here.
Lowenthal here. Simitian?
Here.
Simitian here. Strickland?
Here.
Strickland here. Wiggins?
Here.
Wiggins here. Wright?
Here.
Right here.
Quorum is established. Mr. Krikorian, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And let me first agree with all of your introductory comments. This has been a long journey. It's been the kind of policy making that I think that we don't do often enough in this building. It's been a collaborative and transparent process that has drawn the input of the wide spectrum of stakeholders, and I think we have all benefited from that input. And I want to recognize Senator Simitian especially for the great work that he's done in SB 14, and you, Mr. Chairman, as well as Chairman Fuentes on our side for working in a bicameral way to come to a package of policies that I think is going to advance the RPS in a productive and effective way. We're presenting now on amendments that are in mock-up form, and Mr. Chair, I don't know what your preference would be in terms of identifying the amendments. I can present on them in a general sense. I think the mock-up amendment has been made available to all members?
Yes.
Okay.
All members have copies of the mock-up language in their packets.
Okay. Well, we did have a thorough discussion yesterday, as you mentioned, on SB 14 in Assembly Utilities and Commerce. SB 14 contains what most people think of as being the change in the RPS, the so-called rates and dates that specify the pace of our achievement and move us to 33% by 2020. AB 64 is an important companion to that effort because it helps to streamline the process and eliminate many of the barriers that currently exist to expanding our reliance on renewable energy. The components of AB 64 that work in conjunction with SB 14 are as follows. First, in terms of streamlining siting of transmission and generation. At the Department of Fish and Game, an internal review team will implement measures to accelerate the environmental review work performed by the department and focus on making sure that our state's renewable projects move forward while still preserving CEQA and the other strong environmental standards that protect our state's environment. This bill also provides front-stop rate recovery at the PUC for proposed renewable transmission lines that are pending FERC approval to ensure that project proponents are not investing in a project whose economic impact is still not known. The bill requires that the CAISO coordinate with other balancing authorities in the state to reduce duplicative effort, avoid conflict, and work together in an effective way to achieve 33% by 2020. This bill also requires the PUC to streamline its processes for transmission approval so that they can get steel in the ground for necessary transmission lines in 18 months. AB 64 adds language to ensure that the achievement of our renewable goals is compatible with efficient combined heat and power systems that will help us get to our carbon reduction goals as outlined in AB 32. The language in this bill does not make combined heat and power a renewable resource. It doesn't conflate those issues, but it does require that achieving those goals will be done in a way that doesn't it is a legislature's intent to ensure that our RPS goals do not interfere with our goals of reducing carbon emissions through the use of CHP. AB 64 also incentivizes utility-owned generation to further promote in-state development, while the federal production tax credit and investment tax credit can still be applied. AB 64 will also make several conforming changes related to the Renewable Resources Trust Fund program and the Public Goods Charge program. I don't think I want to go, Mr. Chairman, into the details of SB 14 as well at this point, because we have done that thoroughly yesterday, and as you've indicated, time is short. So with that, why don't we just go ahead to hear from witnesses?
Okay, let's members hear from witnesses and then come to specific questions or comments from members of the committee to guide our discussion at that point. Witnesses in support. If you all would line up and please come forward. Please limit your comments to less than a minute if possible. Again, I'd be shocked if there's any new information or opinion or suggestions that are going to be raised today that haven't been raised in this committee earlier this year.
Mr. Chairman and members, Ed Bedwell with Pacific Gas and Electric Company. We were at this committee first time this bill was up, and when Senator Simitian's bill was up, and we opposed it strongly. As has been discussed here with the amendments that have been taken, we've now shifted to a support position. We think this bill is in much better shape and provides a real pathway that renewable energy can actually be delivered to customers in the state of California, which was a goal of ours, and we articulated at the first hearing. We're proud to support it.
Thank you very much. Witness.
Mr. Chair, members, Brian White with BP. We are also pleased to support the bill as amended. We've been working for a year on this issue with respect to other greenhouse gas reduction strategies, such as combined heat and power, which Mr. Krikorian mentioned. It was pretty clear that this bill doesn't change RPS requirements, doesn't change definitions. It just makes sure that when we meet the RPS, that we do it in a way so that we can also harmonize our goals for reducing AB 32 greenhouse gas reductions. So with that, we ask for your support.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members, Matt Friedman representing TURN. We'd like to thank the author for all his work on the bill and for the collaborative effort that's led to the place we're at today. We support the bill strongly and look forward to its passage.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, Jay Hance with the State Building Construction Trades Council. It's a great bill for providing more jobs for California. Just keep it short and sweet, and we're strongly in support.
Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa Cortez Roth on behalf of the California Wind Energy Association. Our members are comprised of over 20 companies, mostly project development companies who are actively pursuing projects in California. Our members are small pioneer wind developers to national, multinational renewable energy development companies. We want to thank the author and his staff, as well as Senator Simitian, for the work they've done on this year. We urge your support.
Mr. Chairman, Scott Wetch on behalf of the State Association of Electrical Workers and the California State Pipe Trades Council and the Western States Council of Sheet Metal Workers. I think everybody gave quite a bit to get to this point of compromise for the two bills, and we strongly support the entire package. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Joseph on behalf of the Coalition of California Utility Employees. We support the bill, and I wanted to also thank the author, Senator Simitian, and the chair of this committee and the Assembly Committee for tireless work to make us get to this point. Thank you.
Peter Miller, representing the National Resource Defense Council. Thank the author, his staff, committee, Mr. Chairman, for everyone for their hard work on this bill. For the record, it is not a perfect bill from our perspective, but it is a bill that we can strongly support. Thank you.
Bernadette Del Chiaro with Environment California. Also appreciate the amendments and are in strong support. Thank you.
Laura Wislin with the Union of Concerned Scientists. I want to thank the committee and especially the authors for their dedication to this issue. Like my colleague Peter said, this is not a perfect bill, but we strongly do support it.
Erin Niemela with the Large Scale Solar Association want to say that we support SB 14 if amended and also AB 64 if amended. Really appreciate both of the authors' hard work and the hard work of all of the stakeholders, and particularly the amendment recently on CHP for upfront cost recovery for transmission lines. We do continue to have some concerns about technical issues on the delivery language and also the cost containment provisions, but thank you for the hard work.
Arthur Halbenstock with Bright Source Energy. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Members, thank you very much for the opportunity. We are delighted and want to thank the authors and the committees in both the Senate and the Assembly with this bill. In particular, the transmission financing provision is a huge barrier currently to renewable generation. There are provisions in this bill that will assist in that regard, are a tremendous benefit to California. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members. Mike Murray on behalf of Semper Energy, and we too want to thank all of your collective efforts for this Herculean task on this very complex issue, and we support the bill and urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Bill McGavin with Sierra Club, California. We support the bill, appreciate all the work and improvements that went into it, and look forward to working with you to get it signed.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, Lorraine Pascat for Solar. We strongly support the bill, appreciate all the efforts, leadership of the chair, members involved, and staff.
Mr. Chairman and members, Eli Garcia for the Western States Petroleum Association. With the amendment as proposed in the mock-up, the Western States Petroleum Association removes its prior opposition and appreciates the efforts of the author and the chair and committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members, Donna Brownsley with the Solar Alliance, and we are also removing our opposition based on the amendments for the siting of PV solar facilities. We're very grateful to the author, to all the staff, to all the hard work of everybody. We urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Reed Addis on behalf of the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. With the new amendments to the bill, we are in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Are the witnesses in support? If not, do we have witnesses in opposition today? All right. One person coming forward. Witnesses in opposition, please come forward, form a line if necessary.
Pam Loomis on behalf of the Public Utilities Commission. The Commission regrets that it cannot support SB 14 and AB 64 as a package on RPS reform at this point. In supporting SB 14 and its concerns over AB 64, the Commission had articulated three main concerns. One was equal treatment of all the players, unis, IOUs, the ESPs. This bill has gone in the opposite direction with carve-outs for different groups. The Commission was also very concerned about a WEC-wide approach to renewable program in California. Sorry, I'm out of breath. And the delivery language in this bill has become so complex that Commission staff are concerned that whether it'll even be implementable, that during the time that the guidelines and regulations are developed, that there will be a lapse of time of when out-of-state energy can be delivered to California that is not directly interconnected to the California grid, and that the RECs, even though the REC cap was increased from 20% to 25%, that number is still too low. The Commission's concern is that without doing a WEC-wide approach, there isn't a safety valve for cost containment, and that the ratepayers will pay higher costs for renewable energy. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and members. My name is Dorothy Rothrock with the California Manufacturers and Technology Association, and we're also opposed to the bills. I represent manufacturers in the state who pay costs for energy that are 45% higher than the national average, and the premium is even greater compared to our western states. It's important for an RPS policy to include the western region much more completely than this bill provides. We believe the costs are going to be much too high going forward, and so therefore we oppose.
Mr. Chair, I'm Chris Markson from the California Energy Commission. I'd like to start out by saying that we're a strong supporter of the 33% goal. There is in Section 13 of the mock-up of AB 64, there is a study that we think is a very important study, but we would like to respectfully request that the time that we be given be extended by 6 months to do it. We feel that the July 1st, 2010 date will not give us enough time to adequately finish the study, and we request that we be given until December 31st, 2010.
I appreciate that question, that request. My understanding that's in SB 14, not in AB 64.
Oh, okay. It's in the mock-up I have.
But the author's here, so duly noted.
Thank you.
Next witness.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Kevin Hunting. I'm with the Department of Fish and Game. Our role in the renewable energy RPS world is supporting the Energy Commission in siting and environmental compliance for new generation facilities and transmission facilities. We remain opposed to the bill. My comments are assuming the package between SB 14 and AB 64. For the delivery language, these are comments I made yesterday. We're concerned that the burden of generation sites in California, solely in California, or for the most part in California, would drive costs up for project applicants and generation proponents by pushing them into areas that are less environmentally suitable and thus raise permitting costs and mitigation costs.
Next witness.
Jonathan Changus on behalf of the California Independent System Operator, echoing many of the concerns you've already heard from the PUC, the CEC, and DFG about a WEC-wide approach to resources. CalISO believes that's not only probably the most cost-effective and appropriate approach for achieving our renewable goals, but there's probably a number of benefits from a greenhouse gas perspective as well to harnessing some of those resources. We provided language previously to both committees about deliverability language. Still very much would prefer to see that move forward, and leave it at that.
Thank you very much. Other witnesses in opposition? Last call. Make your way forward.
Rob Oglesby, representing the Air Resources Board, and because we're testifying the package as a whole, I just wanted to underscore our concern with the deliverability issues. I understand that are in the other component, but echoing the concerns of the Energy Commission.
Okay. Thank you. And frankly, on the deliverability or any other element of the package, I don't think it was anybody's expectation at the outset of the year to have a bill that was unanimously accepted and praised. If that was the case, we would be tackling water in the same fashion. But I must say that given the work of the various members involved here, this bill has come a long way. The package has come a long way. And to be able to enjoy today a broad base of support from environmental organizations to renewable energy developers of various sources and technologies to organized labor to consumer groups and utilities, I think we've proved the naysayers wrong in the course of the year. I have a couple of questions and comments to make on the bill itself, but I'll open it up first to other members of the committee first before I do so. Senator Lowenthal.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. I had heard in support now, and I was pleased to hear from PG&E Utility and also from Sempra. Is there anyone here from Edison? Where is Edison? I haven't heard anything from Edison.
That may be your answer.
Edison is not in the House. Thank you.
Have they weighed in?
Have there been do they have a position?
Well, they've had ample opportunity. So let's recognize that.
Maybe they're just late.
And if there's somebody in the hallway, they'll join us briefly. In the meantime, other questions, Senator Lowenthal, or if not, I can come back to you on
I would
the
just like to
representative
understand Edison's position.
In the meantime, Senator Calderon.
Yes, Assemblymember Krikorian, that there's reference made a couple of times here by those in support on the proposed CHP language. Were you going to adopt that proposed language?
The CHP language is already in the mock-up amendments,
right.
And the idea is that it will that the RPS policy will be implemented in a way that it doesn't interfere with our ability to achieve the carbon reduction goals as outlined by CARB for CHP as well.
And if I can comment on that too, having been intimately involved, there was concern upon some that a CHP component of the bill would be considered that would count CHP as renewable. That is not the case.
That is correct. There's nothing in this bill or in its previous version when we had a CHP clause that would suggest that CHP is to be considered a renewable resource, but merely that the common objectives of reducing carbon emissions through the increased use of CHP and the increased use of renewables will be made compatible.
And there was concern by others that depending on how CHP was recognized or not recognized, that it would be interpreted by some that our renewable goals and policies would, quote-unquote, crowd out CHP opportunities. And I don't believe that's the spirit or intent of our renewable policy. So
correct, and that's the importance of this
form.
Language is to ensure that that doesn't happen.
Okay. Other questions of the author? The questions of the author. If not, that was one of them that I had. Second, not so much a question but a comment. I just want to thank you. Aside from the cost containment provisions that are in the bill, that was a high priority of mine consistently throughout the course of the year. I believe I also spoke on a couple of occasions when the Senate bills were moving through on my desire to incent some utility-owned generation. I appreciate what's been done on the 25 plus 5 REX side of it. So just want to thank both Senator Simitian and Senator Krikorian for the language that's in the final proposal. And if there's no further questions or comments from committee, I'll entertain a motion. Oh, Senator Benoit. I was looking for hands here. Senator Benoit. Anybody else? Senator Cox to follow.
Okay. Well, let me just say that, yes, we've had some movement, and I appreciate that. But I'm of the opinion that we are still today at a long distance from where we need to be to have a bill that will not dramatically adversely impact California's competitiveness in the country and in the world, and will not get a governor's signature because of that. And I'm specifically concerned about the cost containment, and there have been some changes, but I don't think they're dramatic. And we heard testimony today from a manufacturer, thank you them for being here, that they are currently paying 45% more than the national average for utilities. We just debated on the floor the NEMI plant closure. One of the concerns they have, and I'm not sure if it was $1 million or $2 million a month in energy costs that they can save by moving that plant to Tennessee, I think it is, or some other part of the country where their utility rates are less, where we're already at 45% more than the rest of the country. And we're going to add to that dramatically by focusing on the provision of power and setting a very high goal of 33%, higher than most anywhere else in the country, and then using an extremely limited definition of what is renewable power to define that goal. All of these things add up to extremely high costs for future purchase of electricity in California, and at a time when we know that this economy is on its knees. We're trying to invite, entice, bring back manufacturing to this state, and this bill does not correct the problems that we identified in the original version satisfactorily. It still limits too much to in-state power, limits the definitions of what qualifies as a renewable. And I understand that this is a two-bill package and that some of those most difficult pieces are in SB 64, but SB 14, thank you. But it is a package. It's being presented as a package, and so I bring those points up.
unfortunately, we don't have the time to go back over each one of those details. I'll be happy to hear your close as far as your I'm sure, other side of that issue. But I think that the people who testify in support have gotten little small tweaks here and there, but in general, they're not going to be hurt by it. It's the ratepayers, whom we heard are from the PUC on the original version of this bill, $10 billion a year figure plus $10 billion for transmission. I don't see a lot of change in here that's going to change those numbers. This is a huge concern for me, and I believe for the governor, and I think should be for all of us. So while I applaud the idea of trying to do as much as we can in renewables, I think that we have to be rational in making sure that we don't make ourselves completely non-competitive, and one of the ways we do that is make sure that our renewable standard is similar to other states, not dramatically stronger, because that just drives our competitivity down, and we're already not competitive with electrical pricing now. So I have strong reservations about the bills, not so much this one, but I'm not going to be able to support it because it's tied with the other, and I wish that we had gotten a lot further in the directions that we've discussed before on these key issues. So thank you very much, but I just urge a no vote.
Senator Cox.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Senator Corrigan, I've got just a couple of questions. I think it's on. Maybe I need to pull it down a little bit. There's some question about this aspect of whether or not we can meet a 33% goal. Is it your understanding that we're even going to have difficulty meeting the 20% mandate, or do you believe that's in the bag?
Well, certainly under the current RPS with the current deadline, no, we will not meet the 20% objective that's set for 2010. And part of the reason for that, Senator, is because of the great limitations that we've had in the ability to build transmission, the incentivization that comes from our pricing structure, and some of the other things that we're trying to address with both SB 14 and AB 64.
And similarly, just for the because this meeting is being taped and we'll have the opportunity to see it many times over, would you just talk to the committee about the pricing aspect? For example, the pricing of solar, the pricing of wind. Just talk to us about that for a moment, just so that we have this on record as to what your understanding of those prices would be, and whether or not there needs to be the kind of subsidies that's being proposed for these products.
Well, I'm not sure specifically what you would like me to speak to, except that under the current law, the way procurement works is there's a market price referent that's used as a measure for whether or not renewables are above the market price for fuel. Sometimes they are, sometimes they are not. Sometimes they're significantly less than the price of natural gas, depending upon the fluctuations in the natural gas market. On the overall issue of cost that might be projected over the course of the next decade as we meet this, even if early on there are infrastructure costs and above market costs because the technologies have not yet developed to, some of the technologies have not yet developed to the point that they're immediately cost effective. I think you have to also take into consideration that once the infrastructure is built, there is no cost for renewable fuel. And so the longer term pricing, I think, works very favorably for renewables. You also have to take into account the fact that the great fluctuations in natural gas price is itself a problem in the status quo, and so our complete dependence on fossil fuels, and especially imported natural gas, leaves us hostage, really, to energy providers from out of state, and we've seen the ramifications that have come from that in the past.
Mr. Krikourian, is it not your understanding or belief that this portfolio, for all intents and purposes, would provide a rather low reliability and high costs, and then concurrently, then with the low reliability and the high cost, for all intents and purposes, as Mr. Benoit was talking about, will cost the state of California jobs. Is that not your conclusion?
No, I think I conclude exactly the opposite of that. I think this is a bill that will create thousands of jobs in California, the green jobs that we always talk about wanting to create, but never seem able to get around to doing it. So by creating a renewable energy industry and demand for that industry here in California, while still providing substantial flexibility for out-of-state purchases as well, I think we achieve both of those objectives very well with this bill, with these two bills.
Well, I'm glad we have the opportunity to get you to say that on the microphone, so that we'll have a recording in the coming years. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Cox. Senator Wright.
I think if you took the 6% factor that you allow, if you say applied that to PG&E's service territory, convert that into a number. 6% of their gross sales at 208. What does that factor out to as a number?
You're asking me to do that? I don't have that number immediately.
It's about $8 billion.
Okay.
In over market charges. Edison comes in at about almost 11 to 12, and you add another billion for Sempra, and then if you take DWP and the other munis. So what we're discussing today is an over-market charge to ratepayers over the period of time of the bill of somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 billion.
No, sir. What we're discussing is a cap that would be at the 6% level, but certainly there's no indication that we would ever reach that cap in the first place.
Here's the problem with that. If you say that you're going to pay 6%, then 6% is what you'll pay. In the current market, every time you said, when we first did this, what we did was we said that there's a benchmark, and then the seller had to risk whether or not he cleared the sale, so that we shifted the risk to the vendor. If you say that your cap is 6%, then that's your cost. And everybody understands that since I have to buy it, because you're saying to the retailers, you have to buy it. And you're saying to the retailer that 6%, you're saying to the world that 6% is available. So that means that you're going to pay the $30 billion because the retailer knows that you have to buy it, and that 6% is how much you have to play with. That's a difficulty for me. I prefer, when I first wrote the market price reference, I didn't put in the number, and we allowed the PUC, and I think that was part of the PUC's concern. We allowed them to then decide as a group how much they would pay, so that the risk of purchase shifted to the vendor. 6% scares me. I mean, I was looking at 2 to 3%, but I also wasn't including the IOU, so I was looking at 8 to 10 billion over that same period of time. One of the other things that concerns me, again, is you're right with respect to the fuel mix, except the problem when you're discussing the current state of renewables is that you have to go back and look at resource adequacy and whether or not these resources occur on peak. Mm-hmm. So I submit to you that your reduction in gas consumption, even if you achieve the 33%, would be minuscule because many of these resources don't occur at the time that you need the electricity delivered. So because they don't, you're still going to end up, for example, one of the irrigation districts will comply with a renewable portfolio standard and have a net increase in gas consumption. And you would say, well, how do they do that? Because the renewables that they purchased, given their reliability, require them to buy peaker plants to back them up so that they are able to deliver the reliability that their system requires. So I'm not certain, as written, that you end up with a net reduction in some cases of how much gas you consume. You mention in the piece that there's an 18-month component for the PUC to deal with transmission issues. Absent there being, does that mean that there would be some alteration in the CEQA proceeding?
No, sir.
Then how does the PUC shorten its time for transmission siting when the thing that takes the most time is the CEQA proceeding? So if you leave the CEQA proceeding in place, then how do you, and what happens if they don't meet 18 months? I mean, it would be my next question. I mean, right now, the thing that takes the most time is the CEQA proceeding in the transmission siting. I'm not saying that that's good or bad. I'm just saying it is. If you're going to say that 18 months is a goal or a statute, what happens if they don't meet it, and what tools do they have in order to meet it if they don't have any ability to deal with CEQA?
And if I'm recalling correctly, the 18-month proposal for the PUC was consistent with what the governor had recommended in his executive order.
That didn't work either.
Well, not yet.
Same problem, because he didn't have the authority through executive order to modify CEQA. So his didn't work. And if you're not modifying CEQA, yours won't work either. So then the question becomes, since it won't work, we've tried this twice and it didn't work, what happens in the event that they don't meet it? As we probably can assume they won't. What does your bill say? If they don't meet the 18 months, what happens?
I think that the bill provides that the PUC will be mandated to meet that goal.
People in hell want ice water, too. They don't always get it. What happens? And I'm sorry, I take that. But
Senator Wright,
what happens? What happens if they don't meet it? If they don't have the ability to modify CEQA?
Let me chime in here, because there is language in the bill that allows the Commission to adopt or grant an extension of time if that 18-month proves unreachable in a specific application. As Assemblymember Krikorian has mentioned, it's part of the governor's executive order anyway. I think the PUC, who has not said that they can't or won't transition to achieving the 18-month time frame, they're just in the process of figuring out how they do get there without compromising. There's a difference between a CEQA process and CEQA timeframes. Yes, they're interrelated. So I think they're making all good faith efforts to achieve that 18 months. But the language is in the bill to accommodate more than 18 months when
they don't meet. Okay, so we kind of sort of back, because I was reading for what the consequence was of not meeting it, and what I've learned in government is if there's no consequence, then you usually don't. And if there's no tool that allows you to do something different,
there's the flexibility there.
Then you're kind of stuck, because this is a revenue stream for a whole lot of people to play the CEQA time clock. So if you're not going to alter that time clock, then you'll end up in the same place. The other concern I had was often in these programs, take again in Northern California, we're going to lose, and we may not. I mean, I'm still optimistic, as is Senator Corbett, that we hopefully will not lose NUMMI, for example. But God forbid, let's say that we lose the NUMMI plant. That means that all of the load that is currently going to the NUMMI plant is going to go back to PG&E, and the cost of that load is going to be then dispersed against the ratepayers. In that instance, to take that one circumstance, would you still have a 33% or an annual procurement requirement, given the fact that if your load diminishes, then there won't be the need to purchase additional electricity? So if you said 33% of what your load is today, and the load drops, are you basing the 33% on what's being consumed? I mean, to fast forward, one of the concerns I have in many of these is that the cost actually increases beyond the $30 billion that I described if you end up in a situation where you're purchasing electricity that you really don't need. That's why I typically like the cost or the purchase to be based on a percentage of load and not how much the procurement cost was, because in that way it's based on something that was realistic to what they were buying. I mean, in the case of that NUMMI plant, their annual utility bill was $2 million a month. That $2 million a month is electricity that PG&E has already purchased, probably for the next 5 or 10 years. that cost of $2 million a month is going to be dispersed to the ratepayers of the PG&E territory. So they're going to pay that in addition to the $8 billion over the 11 years of RPS charges. I'm just saying that that's when you begin to factor that in. And if Southern California and Edison, it's about 11 or 12 billion. And should there be a reduction in industry there, they too, under the current draft, would also incur over-market charges and additional load charges that occur because of reductions in load. That concerns me. So I'm not able to support. I mean, and I too, as many people have said, I think that the bill that I'm looking at today is substantially better than the bill that I saw several months ago. But
I'm going to just take that last sentence and bottle it right now.
Okay.
I think I know where the vote may be, but I'd love to end on that last sentence. Other members of the committee with questions or comments? Senator Simitian.
Thank you. First of all, Senator Krikorian, Assemblymember Krikorian, I've thought about it a lot, and I'm going to support your bill today.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Let me lead with the headline, if I may. And let me raise a couple of observations as you and I have worked on this with our colleagues over the months. There's a really big and important question that's been raised, and the question is this doable? And here's what I would say. PG&E says that it's doable, Sempra says that it's doable, and DWP says that it's doable. Those are three of the largest four providers in the state. They think it's doable. They support the bill. Put that aside for a moment. The question is, have we together, taking the bills as a package, put together a construct that allows people to go get the energy they need to meet this requirement? There's 5 different ways they can do it. They can build their own renewable energy if they want. If they need more or don't want to do that, they can contract with somebody else for their own renewable energy right here in California. If that isn't enough, they can take renewable energy across state lines in unlimited amounts if there's a direct connection with California. If that still isn't enough to address the issues that were raised earlier in the conversations, which were very helpful about the intermittency of certain sources and the need to firm and shape those sources, then the deliverability language, which people have now said, oh, it's complicated. Yeah, because deliverability of intermittent resources is complicated, and we responded to the concern. And you can do that in unlimited amounts. And then if all of that still hasn't gotten you to 33%, then you can go ahead and use the unbundled, undelivered paper RECs, the renewable energy credits, up to 30%. 25 is a given, and you can earn your way up to 30%. So you've got not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 different ways to get there, which is why eventually folks said, yeah, we can do it. So is it doable? The answer is absolutely yes. On the issue of cost, first of all, folks come up with numbers that they just pull out of this place or that place. Let's remember what our own Appropriations Committee told us about this issue months ago, which was that we were looking at something like a half cent on a 15-cent kilowatt-hour basis, or about 3.5% as their estimate. But that estimate was based on the assumption that fossil fuels would remain at the same price, when in fact fossil fuels are likely to go up since they're a finite resource and we're using more and more of them. That estimate was not taking into consideration the potential carbon costs that will be attached to fossil fuels going forward, either by this state government or by the U.S. government. That estimate was not providing any discount for the anticipated reduction in the cost of technology for renewables in the future years. And if you think about all that, 3.5% doesn't really even sound like it might be that much. But if you don't believe me and you don't think those are fair, people said, we need a cost cap so that come hell or high water, we know there's some limit on this. So we said, all right, let's put 6% in place. And immediately everybody said, all right, let's just take the 6% and multiply it by the cost. That's how much it's going to cost. No, that's the absolute most. That's the cost cap that people asked for and that is now in the package of bills. And by the way, since it's recently been revised so that it is a programmatic cost cap and not an annualized cost cap, When you base that on a 2008 year, my expectation is that the cost gap actually ends up being more in the range of between 4 and 5% because we're locking in a lower cost. So is it going to be cost effective? It is. And that's without even considering the hedge against the kind of market manipulation that Mr. Krikorian referenced earlier. And finally, on the cost issue, the way we bring the cost down is by having robust competition. That's something that my friends on the other side of the aisle and I agree on. And the way you get robust competition is by saying California's serious about renewable energy, and we mean it when we say 33% by 2020. And if we do that, then all of a sudden, all that entrepreneurial spirit and all those billions of dollars of investment capital are going to move forward. Now, the piece that Assemblyman Krikorian, in my view, deserves particular appreciation for is that he has heard the folks who have said, you know what, saying it doesn't make it so. We need to do some things that facilitate making it happen. So he's got the piece about the ISO trying to facilitate transmission. He's got the piece about Fish and Game trying to facilitate. He's got the piece about the PUC moving along on these certificates of public convenience and necessity. He's got the piece about the CEC helping with concurrent approval so that we don't have time followed by time. And he's got the money for the PUC, for the staff to help with transmission. Those are all the kinds of things that we should be doing. But again, for folks who say we're not sure we can get there, remember that one of the things this bill does as an accommodation to the folks who have to make this happen is that 2010 deadline has now been set to 2013. And if there isn't adequate transmission, and if there isn't adequate siting, or there are permitting delays, or there's insufficient supply, the bill says, by the way, kick it another 2 years. We've got folks on the pro-renewable side who think that the package of bills has built in too much flexibility. So please understand that all of those issues which were raised earlier in this very lengthy and good process have in fact been responded to. And critically, the bill takes some steps to say, let's make sure that it is easier to get to that goal as we set that goal. I'm an aye vote today, and I appreciate the work that Assemblymember Krikorian has done.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Simitian. Before affording Senator Krikorian a chance to close, I recognize Senator Benoit.
Thank you, and I'll be brief. It's just an observation. I wasn't here, but as I recall reading my history books, when we did the restructuring, we had all the major utilities here saying it was doable. It was, but what cost to the California consumer? And they're here today saying this is doable. There's going to be a cost. It may be somewhere between my good colleague Mr. Wright says and what you're envisioning, but it's going to be a huge cost. And I don't think we have a handle on exactly what that cost is going to be. I think that this bill continues to move us in a direction of a lot of cases unknowns. But we do know that right now we're paying 45% more than many other states, or maybe the average of other states. And we can't afford more costs. We should do this in a fashion that has off-ramps, that doesn't create penalties, that cost utilities, and then that's passed on to the consumer on top of the expensive new cost of power. This bill is still a flawed product, and I wish we had gone back and taken a lot more serious look at some of the costs that are built into this process. And I would recommend a no vote. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, let me just say, if I may, and I appreciate Senator Simitian's comments, but I was here in 1998, I believe, the year after this legislature made a decision about how we ought to do some restructuring as far as the energy portfolio was concerned in California. And Senator Benoit was absolutely right. The utilities were saying that they could do it. Clearly, the Assembly and the Senate said, yeah, they can do it. And the interesting thing is that we didn't take time enough then to get it right, and we're not taking time enough now to get it right. Just want everybody to understand that now what we're doing is talking about placing a greater burden on the ratepayers in the state of California as a result of this renewable portfolio that frankly just has not had enough vetting in order to in fact move it in the direction so that it does in fact make some economic sense.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Simitian.
Forgive me, but there was a renewable bill that spent 2 years moving through the process in 1997 and 98. This bill has spent the entire year, as has my complement to it, spent the entire year moving through both houses with a level of scrutiny that is really quite extraordinary. So while my friend and colleague and I may disagree on whether we ought to cast an aye vote or a no vote, I would respectfully suggest that when you've had 3 years of discussion and debate in an open and public process with amendments that are posted online for anyone anywhere in the world to see, following the debate we had, by the way, for 2 years about 20% by 2010, that it is widely inaccurate to suggest that there has been a rush. The message we heard about 20% by 2010, irony of ironies, was, gee, we didn't know you were serious, and when you passed the law in 2006, that didn't give us much time to get there. So now we finally said, you know what, let's make sure everybody has plenty of time. Let's get a nice long time period between now and 2020 to get there. And I think to suggest that it has been otherwise is wide of the mark.
Well, Mr. Chairman, let me just, I know this is not ping pong, sir, but let me just say to you that just because you say that you've taken a couple of years to study it, and just because you say that all of it's been looked at and everybody's had their opportunity to see it, the fact of the matter is if you begin with the wrong facts, you reach the wrong conclusion, and that's precisely where we are now.
And, Senator, I don't mind the fact that you think I'm wrong. I do mind the fact that you suggest that it has been rushed.
Okay. And I think we're veering off the substance of the bill before us. Respectfully, colleagues, if there's additional questions or comments for the author, I'll take those. If not, Senator Krikorian, would you like to close?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senators, clearly we don't have unanimity of agreement on this bill. When we started the discussion a year or so ago, I said many times that we probably never would, and we may never even reach a point of consensus, but that it was vitally important to the future of this state that we reached out to the broad spectrum of stakeholders and developed a comprehensive renewable energy policy that benefited from the input of all of them. And I appreciate the comments by several senators who, although still in opposition, have recognized the progress that we've made through that process. And I think I also want to make special note of the Pro Tem's leadership and the Speaker's leadership in bringing us together in a bicameral way to do this, as well as yourself, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Fuentes, and of course, Mr. Simitian, who've worked so hard on this. This is not by any means a perfect bill. I don't claim it to be. But I think it is a very good, thoughtful approach to achieving our renewable energy objectives. And as long as we continue to work in this kind of a transparent and collaborative way, we will continue to be able to make energy policy better in California as we move forward. But it's important that we get started. And today is the day that we get started. Today is the day that we start upon the Herculean task of freeing California from its overdependence on fossil fuels. Today is the day that we make significant progress towards achieving our greenhouse gas reduction goals. Today is the day that we begin improving local air quality and improving public health, creating more fuel diversity and price stability, and even potentially reducing rates as we become more and more reliant on free fuel for our electricity. And today is the day that we really claim the mantle of world leadership in renewable energy to the point that we may potentially export to the rest of the western United States our renewable energies. We have the opportunity to create countless jobs, to spur innovation, to entice capital investment into California, and to create entire new industries that will cause the rest of the world to beat a path to our doorstep. And so for all those reasons, I again thank you all, senators, for your attention, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. And before hearing the motion, let me also thank you, Senator Krikorian and Senator Simitian, who has been on this issue and the 33% goal specifically for more than just this year. It's in fact a couple of years, and most conversations, most committee hearings have always started with, well, we support 33% by 2020, and the differences of opinion or opposition in some cases has always been on how to get there, not whether or not this was the goal that we ought to be adopting. So I wanted to put whatever critique, criticism, opposition there has been in the proper context. To use your word, this isn't a perfect bill. I don't think very much of our legislative product is perfect because we're all humans. And that's why there's a term known as cleanup language that always comes up at some point in the future to continue to refine. But is this a good bill that we should advance? I certainly believe so. Some people have called our RPS program a failure because we may fall just a little short of the 20% by 2010. I view it as a significant success because since the initial 2017 goal was adopted, there have been numerous renewable energy producing plants that have come online. In large part due to the program, the policies and incentives that California has, and countless amounts of energy that we can quantify as a result as well. For those concerned about cost containment, I being among the most vocal, I believe I'm comfortable with the cost containment managers in our PUC code overall, but certainly in the renewable energy policy specifically. The 6%, I disagree with some of my colleagues who've suggested that it may be a driver of price increases or the cost of contracts. It is a cap. And maybe we reach up to 6%, and it is a cap to make sure that we don't go beyond it. But it could very likely fall below that 6%. So we shouldn't read too much into that. And for those who do have that memory to the dark hours and the death marches of 10 years ago, let me just point out that it is now 3:30 p.m., not 3:30 a.m., the time at which we're about to cast a vote. So with that, I also thank both Senator Simitian, Senator Krikorian, the legislative leaders who prioritize this issue in both houses as a work product for the year, and tremendous respect and appreciation for my counterpart in the Assembly, the Utilities Chair, Assemblymember Fuentes, who I think has done a great job here in the home stretch to produce this product as well. Do I have a motion?
Move the bill.
Senator Simitian moves the bill.
Senator Wiggins.
Senator Wiggins moves the bill. A co-motion. Please call the roll.
Padilla?
Aye.
Padilla, aye. Benoit?
No.
Benoit, no. Calderon? Corbett? Aye. Corbett, aye. Cox?
No.
Cox, no. Kehoe?
Aye.
Kehoe, aye. Lowenthal?
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Simitian?
No.
Strickland? Strickland? Wiggins?
Aye.
Wiggins, aye. Wright?
No.
Wright, no. Simitian, aye. 6-3.
That bill is out. Thank you all very much. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you very much.